You'd think by the time you hit 30, you'd have most things figured out. I didn't. I was 30, single, quietly gay, and absolutely nobody knew it. Not my parents, not my friends, not even my therapist. It wasn't that I was ashamed, exactly. I just never felt like the timing was right. I kept waiting for the right moment, and somehow, a decade slipped by. Then Jamie moved back. We hadn't spoken in years. He was one of those people who'd been orbiting my life since middle school. In high school, he was the guy who knew everyone. Easygoing, always laughing, the type of straight dude who made gay kids like me feel seen, but also invisible at the same time. We'd been close-ish for a while, then just drifted, like people do. Out of nowhere, he messaged me on Facebook, "Hey man, I'm moving back to town next month. Any chance you've got a spare couch?" The old me wanted to say no. Keep things simple. But something, maybe loneliness, maybe just curiosity, made me say, sure. When he showed up at my apartment a few weeks later with 2 duffel bags and that same damn crooked smile, I knew I was screwed. Jamie hadn't changed much. A little scruffier, a little more tired looking around the eyes, but still him. Still easy to talk to. Still able to make me laugh harder than anyone else. And within days, we were falling into this casual rhythm like no time had passed at all. Nights were the worst. We'd stay up talking, often with a beer in hand, music low in the background. He'd sit on the floor, back against the couch, feet outstretched, and I'd be on the edge of my bed pretending to listen while mostly just trying to keep my eyes above his neckline. He asked questions, real ones. You ever think about getting married? You ever feel like your life turned out the way you thought it would? You ever wish you'd said something back then that you didn't? He didn't know he was inching closer. Or maybe he did. One night, about 2 weeks in, he caught me off guard. We were talking about old classmates, people from high school, who got fat, who got divorced, who got famous on TikTok. I made some dumb comment about always being the quiet one, and Jamie turned to me, suddenly serious. "You ever wonder why?" he asked. "Why what?" "Why you kept your distance, like, from everyone." The room got quiet. I felt my throat tighten, and for a second, I thought I might just lie again, like I always did. Just shrug it off, make a joke, pivot to sports or politics or literally anything else. But I didn't. I looked at him. And I said it. I'm gay. It was the first time I'd ever said it out loud to anyone who actually mattered. He didn't flinch. He didn't joke. He just stared at me for a long second and said, "Okay." Then he got up and hugged me. It wasn't awkward or weird or overly emotional. It was just warm, like he'd been waiting for me to say it. After I came out to Jamie, something shifted between us, not in a bad way, not in the way I'd feared, where he might start avoiding me or acting weird. If anything, it was the opposite. He got more relaxed, like the air had cleared. Like now that I'd dropped this massive truth, we could both just breathe. We didn't talk about it that night. After the hug, he didn't press me. He just went back to his spot on the floor, cracked open another beer, and started talking about some movie he wanted to watch. That was it. No dramatic conversation, no invasive questions. Just normal. And that made me like him more than I already did, which was really starting to be a problem. The next day, I expected things to be different. I waited for some kind of weirdness, a moment where he'd hesitate or double-check his words around me. But it never came. If anything, he was more present, more open. He made breakfast while blasting an old Arctic Monkeys album, and he didn't even flinch when I made a joke about how the lead singer was my first real crush. He just smirked and said, "Good taste, man." It was dangerous, this closeness, because now that he knew and didn't run, the guard I'd spent years perfecting was falling fast. He asked more questions about my life, real ones, with a kind of quiet interest that made it hard to deflect. I told him I hadn't dated seriously, that most of my 20s were spent pretending, that I'd convinced myself it wasn't worth it, that it was easier to play the straight guy and stay invisible. He listened, really listened, and sometimes after a long pause he'd share things about himself too. Nothing dramatic, just pieces I'd never known, about his dad leaving when he was 15, About a girl he almost moved in with after college, but couldn't commit. About how he always thought he'd have things figured out by now, but instead he was crashing on a friend's couch, trying to piece his life back together. I liked hearing him be vulnerable. I liked it too much. One night, a week after I came out, we were watching this ridiculous horror movie neither of us cared about. Jamie was stretched out across the couch, his feet barely brushing my thigh where I sat on the other end. It was innocent. But it wasn't. Not to me. Every time he laughed, my chest tightened. Every time he shifted and his foot pressed slightly against me, I pretended not to notice, even though my skin burned where we touched. At one point he asked me, "So did you always know?" I turned to him. "That I was gay?" He nodded. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Since I was a kid, probably. I just buried it. Tried not to think about it. Then college came, and I was too focused on surviving. Then work. Then life. And now here I am, 30, and just starting to figure it all out." He didn't say anything right away. He just stared at me like he was reading something off my face. "That must have been lonely," he said. I laughed, but it came out a little broken. Yeah, it kind of was." Jamie sat up, fully now. He turned so he was facing me, elbows on his knees, expression unreadable. The room was quiet except for the credits rolling in the background. "You ever tell anyone before me?" "No, not even one person." I shook my head. His eyes softened. "That's kind of huge, man." "I know." "You trust me that much?" I didn't mean to say it, but I did. "Yeah." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded, like something had just settled in him, like he'd been carrying a question and finally had an answer. The next day, I found him in the kitchen scrolling his phone, shirtless and half asleep. I was making coffee and trying not to stare, but then he looked up and said, "Hey, you want to go out tonight?" I blinked. "Out where?" Out. Drinks, maybe that gay bar on 9th you mentioned the other night." I stared at him. "You want to go to that bar?" He shrugged like it was nothing. "Why not?" "Could be fun." I hesitated. "You're not gonna feel weird?" "Why would I?" "Because you're straight," I almost said. "Because you've never really hung out with me in public, now that I'm officially out. Because part of me is terrified I'm falling for you, and it'll be 10 times worse watching you flirt with bartenders, while pretending I'm not 3 drinks away from telling you how badly I want to kiss you." Instead, I said sure. We went that night, and it was one of the strangest, best nights I've had in a long time. Jamie fit in too easily. He was charming, friendly, completely unbothered. Guys flirted with him, and he laughed it off like it was all just part of the fun. He didn't act weird when I talked to people either. In fact, he even wingmaned for me. Hard. "This is my buddy Nate," he told one guy. "He's into smart guys. You look like you read books." I nearly spit out my drink. At some point, I ended up on the tiny dance floor. The music was loud, the lights were dim, and I let go for the first time in what felt like years. Just dancing, moving, existing without all the usual filters. I didn't realize Jamie was watching until I turned and saw him near the bar, arms crossed, grinning like he'd just caught me doing something scandalous. He raised his glass at me and mouthed, "There he is." When we got home that night, everything felt buzzed and loose. We didn't say much. He changed into shorts, I brushed my teeth, and we both collapsed into our usual spots, me in bed, him on the pull-out couch. But before turning off the light, he said, "Hey, yeah, I'm glad you told me." And then, softer, "I'm really fucking proud of you." Jamie didn't kiss me that night, but I thought about it. I thought about it for hours. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the way he'd looked at me at the bar, the way he'd said he was proud of me like it meant something deeper. And when the apartment went quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional car rolling by outside, I caught myself listening for his breathing, just to know he was still awake. The next morning, he was already making eggs when I stumbled into the kitchen. No shirt, just those soft gray sweatpants that should have been illegal. His hair was a mess, and he had this stupid look on his face like he already knew I hadn't slept. "Morning," he said, like he hadn't shaken up my whole world the night before. I nodded, rubbing my face. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he said casually, flipping a pan over the stove. "I kept thinking about you dancing last night." I stopped mid-step. "What?" He grinned. "You look different. Lighter, like you were actually having fun." I was. I could tell. I grabbed a mug and poured myself coffee, trying to act like my heart wasn't now racing again. "You didn't dance," I said, glancing over. He shrugged. "Didn't want to cramp your style." "You mean you didn't want to embarrass yourself?" Jamie chuckled. "Also true. We ate breakfast, and things felt normal. Maybe too normal, like we were both avoiding something neither of us could name. But there was a thread running under everything now, a tension that hadn't been there before, a kind of closeness that felt new and terrifying. That night, we sat on the couch again, another movie, another couple beers, but halfway through, Jamie shifted, turned to me and asked, "You ever kissed a guy?" I blinked. Yeah, a few. Not recently." His eyes didn't leave mine. "Like, ever?" I shrugged. "Couple of flings. Nothing serious." He nodded slowly. "Was it weird?" "What?" "Kissing a guy. First time." I stared at him. "Why are you asking?" He hesitated. "Just curious." I waited, but he didn't say anything else. Just looked at me, like he was trying to read something in my expression. I looked away. "It wasn't weird," I said quietly. "It felt right, like he was supposed to." Jamie didn't respond. The silence stretched a little too long. Then he reached for his beer and took a sip, eyes still on the screen. The next day, I went to work. I'd barely thought about anything else since our conversation. My head was a mess, trying to figure out if he was just curious, if he was testing me, or if maybe it was more. When I came home, the lights were off. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I assumed he was out, but then I noticed his shoes by the door and his jacket on the hook. He was in the living room, sitting on the floor, music playing low on his phone, some ambient indie track I didn't recognize. He looked up at me when I walked in but didn't speak right away. "You okay?" I asked, dropping my bag. He nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." I sat across from him on the carpet, the soft hum of the music filling the space between us. "You ever think about how weird it is," he said after a long pause, "that we've known each other so long and we still don't really know each other?" I tilted my head. "I feel like I know you better now than I ever did." Jamie looked at me, and something in his expression cracked open. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said. "About what?" He shook his head, rubbed the back of his neck. "This. You. Me." I didn't move. "What about me?" He stared down at his hands. "I've been thinking about kissing you for 3 days." Silence. Pure, ringing silence. I couldn't breathe. My pulse pounded in my ears, and I didn't trust myself to say anything. I thought if I spoke, I might ruin whatever this was, this fragile, impossible thing forming in front of me. So I didn't speak. I just reached across the small space between us, and I touched his hand. He looked up at me. And that was it. That was the moment. He leaned in, slow, unsure. His hand slid around the back of my neck, hesitated for a split second like he was asking a question without words, and then he kissed me. It was soft. Hesitant at first, just lips. But the second I responded, the second I kissed him back, something inside both of us snapped loose. He leaned in harder, kissed me like he'd been holding it back for years. My hands found his chest, his arms, pulled him closer. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was real, raw, warm, familiar, and brand new at the same time. When we finally pulled apart, we both sat there, breathing hard, like we'd just sprinted a mile. Jamie's voice was low, almost a whisper. "I don't know what that means." I nodded. "Me neither, but I don't regret it." "Me neither." He reached for my hand again and held it, just like that. No jokes, no distance, just presence. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We didn't do anything more. We just sat there, leaned into each other, talked. About everything. About how he'd always been curious but scared. About how I'd been hiding for so long I forgot what wanting something felt like. And when we finally went to sleep, him back on the pullout, me in bed, there was no tension, no pretending. Just two people caught in something they didn't expect but couldn't ignore. The morning after Jamie kissed me, everything should have felt different. And it did, but not in the way I expected. I'd imagined waking up overwhelmed, anxious, unsure what to say. But when I opened my eyes and padded out to the kitchen to find him already making coffee, again, shirtless, again, looking too casual for someone who just kissed his male friend the night before, it wasn't awkward. It was quiet. Natural. He looked up, smiled like always, and said, "You want eggs?" "Sure," I said, my voice still thick from sleep. He didn't bring up the kiss. Neither did I. Not yet. But the air between us was different, charged. Every glance felt longer, every brush of an arm or shoulder a little more meaningful. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was living in my own body, instead of just passing through it. We ate breakfast, traded the usual small talk, work, weekend plans, a dumb video one of his friends sent him. But underneath it all, I could feel this thread running between us. Not tension, not uncertainty, just something real, something neither of us wanted to mess up by naming too quickly. Later that day, we found ourselves out running errands, groceries, oil change, that kind of mundane adult stuff. At one point in the parking lot, he reached into the back seat and passed me a case of LaCroix, and our fingers touched. Briefly. But he didn't pull away right away. Just looked at me. And I saw it again. That look from the bar, the one that said, "I see you now." Back at the apartment, it was raining. Soft, steady rain against the windows. Jamie sprawled out on the couch while I worked on some reports from my laptop at the kitchen table. I couldn't focus, not because the work was hard, but because he was right there, 20 feet away, the memory of his lips still living in my skin, and every now and then he'd stretch, or shift, or glance over at me, and it sent this stupid flutter through my chest. Eventually he called out, "Hey." I looked up. "I was thinking," he said, propping himself up on his elbow. "You want to do something tonight?" "Like what?" He gave me this shrug. "Something chill. Takeout. Watch something we actually like this time." I smirked. "That zombie movie last night was your pick, and you were clearly riveted." I laughed, closing my laptop. "All right. You pick dinner. I'll pick the movie." He nodded. "Deal." That night felt cozy. There's no better word for it. He ordered Indian food. I made popcorn. We picked an old 90s thriller we both remembered vaguely, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to someone in the room with me. I wasn't filtering my voice, wasn't sitting with a foot of space between us. In fact, by the halfway mark, Jamie's thigh was pressed against mine, his arms slung casually over the back of the couch behind me. I could feel the heat of him. I didn't move away. Neither did he. The movie ended and the credits rolled, but we didn't get up. We just sat there, the light from the TV flickering across the room, rain still whispering against the windows. Jamie turned his head and looked at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "That night I kissed you," he paused, rubbed his jaw. "Did it feel one-sided?" I blinked. "What?" I mean, was it something you actually wanted? Or were you just going along with it? Like, I don't want to be that guy who pushes something on someone because he's confused. I shook my head. "No, Jamie, I wanted it." His eyes softened. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He exhaled, and I watched the tension drain from his shoulders. Good, because I've been thinking about it all day, and I didn't want to be the only one. You weren't, There was a pause, and then, okay, so can I do it again? I didn't answer. I just leaned in. This time, the kiss was slower, more certain. His hand slid to my jaw, mine to his waist, and everything else fell away. The rain, the movie, the uncertainty. There was no hesitation now. Eventually, we broke apart, and he leaned his forehead against mine. I don't know what this is yet, he murmured, but I don't want to pretend like it's nothing. I nodded. Me neither. We didn't sleep together that night, not in the physical sense, but he stayed in my bed, fully clothed, just the two of us lying side by side under the covers, our hands laced between us. It felt like being 14 again, except safe, wanted. Around midnight, he whispered, I'm scared. Of what? That I'll mess this up. You won't. He let out a shaky breath and pulled me closer. Okay, then I'm in. Whatever this is, I'm in. I fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat, and for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel alone. It's funny how fast you can go from hiding everything about yourself to holding hands with someone on your couch like it's the most natural thing in the world. Jamie didn't pull away the next morning. He didn't crack a joke or act like the night before had been some kind of drunken mistake. He woke up, looked at me, smiled, barely, and then got up to make coffee, just like that. But things didn't stay simple for long. That weekend, my friend Maya invited us both to her birthday dinner. Just 10 people at a bar downtown, nothing formal. Jamie knew her, tangentially, from a party a year ago, so it didn't seem weird for him to come. And when I asked if he wanted to go, he didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said. Let's go. I was already nervous. It would be my first time showing up to something like that since coming out. I hadn't made a big announcement or anything. I wasn't even sure I would. But people knew me, and I knew how people talk. Even if I said nothing, the way I looked at Jamie now gave it away. I could feel it in the Uber ride over. Jamie's knee bounced. He kept checking his phone like he was waiting for something. He didn't seem nervous. He never seemed nervous, but I could feel the shift in his energy. He didn't reach for my hand like he had the night before. Hey, I said quietly. You good? Yeah, he said, too fast. Just tired, long week. I nodded, didn't press. At the bar, everything started off fine. Drinks. Laughs. Maya doing her usual big hug entrance like she hadn't seen me in years instead of weeks. Jamie sat next to me, comfortable, blending in. People were happy to see him, asked him what he'd been up to, where he'd been living. Nobody said anything about us. Not yet. Then, halfway through dinner, Maya turned to me, half tipsy, half giddy, and asked, So who's the lucky guy? I choked a little on my drink. What? She grinned. Come on, you've got that glow. Is it him? She tilted her head toward Jamie, almost teasing. Jamie froze. I saw it. Just for a second. His smile faltered. His body stiffened just slightly. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I knew what I was looking at. I laughed it off. Just roommates, Maya. And Jamie played along. He gave this easy shrug, downed some beer, and changed the subject to some show they both liked. But the damage was done. The whole walk home, he didn't say a word. We got back to the apartment, and he disappeared into the bathroom for what felt like 20 minutes. When he came out, he went straight to the couch instead of my bed, even though we hadn't slept separately in days. I stood in the hallway, watching him as he pulled the blanket over himself, pretending everything was fine. Are we going to talk about it? I asked. He looked up. About what? Maya. There's nothing to talk about. Jamie. He sat up, face tense. I just didn't expect that, okay? It caught me off guard. Okay. And I didn't know what to say. I panicked. Sorry. You don't have to be sorry. I just want to know where your head's at. His jaw tightened. My head's all over the place, Nate. I kissed you like a week ago, and now suddenly people are asking if we're dating. And I don't even know what to call this. You don't have to call it anything, but don't act like it didn't happen. I'm not. Aren't you? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You've had years to deal with this, to figure out who you are. I'm just starting to realize I might not be who I thought I was. That's not an easy switch to flip. I stepped closer. I'm not asking you to flip anything. I'm just asking you to be real with me. I am being real. This is just scary, okay? And I got it. I really did. But it still hurt. Because for me, this connection, wasn't some confusing idea I was still testing. It was clarity. It was the first time I'd let someone in without shame or second guessing. I nodded slowly. All right, take the couch tonight. Think about it. Just don't leave me guessing. He didn't say anything else. He just laid down and turned away. That night, I stared at my ceiling for hours. Every doubt I'd buried came crawling back. Was this all a phase for him? Just curiosity dressed up as something deeper? Was I setting myself up to get hurt again, after finally letting someone see me? By morning, he was gone. No note. No message. Just an empty couch and his shoes still by the door. I waited. Checked my phone every hour. Told myself he just needed space. That he'd text or call or come back with some big explanation and 1,000 apologies. But by midnight, I knew. He'd run. Jamie was gone for 3 days. No text, no call. Just vanished. On the first day, I didn't panic. I told myself he needed time, space to think, maybe to clear his head. He'd come back, knock on the door, act like nothing had happened, and maybe, if I was lucky, he'd even talk about it. On the second day, I got angry. Not aloud, throwing things, kind of angry. Just the quiet, simmering kind that creeps up on you when you start questioning every moment. Every kiss. Every late-night conversation. I kept replaying his words in my head. I'm in. Whatever this is, I'm in. And wondered how someone could say that and then disappear without a word. By the third day, I felt hollow. Like I'd been picked up, turned inside out, and set down again with nothing left to hold. I stopped waiting by the window. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. I went to work, came home, made dinner, didn't eat it. I laid in bed staring at the spot where he used to sleep, where he used to reach for my hand under the covers. I didn't cry, but I came close. Then, late on the third night, I heard a knock at the door. Not loud, not frantic, just there. I opened it, and he was standing there, hood up, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes heavy, like he hadn't slept. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. He stepped inside quietly, set the bag down by the door, and just stood there. I stayed near the hallway, arms crossed. Not out of anger, more like protection from whatever was coming. Jamie looked at me like he was seeing something he wasn't sure he still had the right to look at. I didn't mean to disappear, he said softly. Okay. I got scared. Yeah, I said. I figured that part out. He winced, like I'd hit him. I'm sorry. I nodded, but didn't move. You could have texted. Anything. I know. I just didn't know what to say. Jamie, I said, stepping a little closer. You kissed me. You held my hand. You slept next to me for a week like it was the most normal thing in the world. And then you left without a word. You don't have to have it all figured out, but I deserve something. Anything. He looked down. You're right. There was a long silence. Then he said, I went to stay with my brother. I raised an eyebrow. You haven't spoken to your brother in like a year. I know, but he's the only one who knows, well, anything. That surprised me. Jamie took a shaky breath. I told him everything. About us. About how confused I've been. About how I've felt since we started getting close again. About the kiss. And that it wasn't just a kiss. I stared at him. He went on. He didn't freak out. He didn't judge me. He just asked me what I wanted, and I didn't know how to answer. Because I've never really thought I was into guys, I never labeled myself anything, and suddenly, you're there, looking at me like that, making me feel more seen in 5 weeks than anyone has in my whole life. His voice cracked on that last part. I got scared, because it felt too good, too real, and I didn't want to screw it up. So I did the only thing I know how to do when something gets too real. I bailed. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, he said. I mean, I want it, I really do. But I get if you can't give it right away. I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you. About us. And I don't want to pretend like it didn't happen. Okay, I said quietly. He looked up. Okay? You don't have to say all the right things. You don't have to pick a label, or post a coming out video, or know what you're doing. But you don't get to disappear on me again. He nodded quickly. I won't, I promise. Because I've been closeted for most of my adult life, I said, my voice a little firmer. And I finally started opening the door. Not for just anyone, for you. So if you're gonna be here, you have to be here, fully. Jamie stepped closer. I want to be. Good. Can I stay? I swallowed. Yeah, but the bed's mine tonight. He smiled, almost laughing. Fair. I walked past him, flicked off the light, and went to the bedroom. I heard him unzip his bag, change clothes, then the couch cushions shifting as he lay down. But 5 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. I didn't answer. I just got up, opened it, and let him in. He didn't try to kiss me, he just crawled in next to me, pulled the blanket up, and found my hand in the dark. He held it like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. And maybe it was. Waking up next to Jamie after everything that had happened felt different this time. There was no haze of uncertainty, no wondering what it meant. His arm was draped lazily across my stomach, his face turned into the pillow, breath soft and even. He looked peaceful. And for the first time since this all started, I felt peaceful too. It wasn't perfect. There was still so much unsaid. But we were both there, in the same bed, by choice. And that meant something. Later that morning, I made coffee. Jamie joined me, rumpled and quiet, hair sticking up at odd angles. He didn't say much at first, just moved around the kitchen like he'd never left. I let him. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full of things we both understood but hadn't said out loud yet. Eventually, we sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee out of chipped mugs like we were any other couple just starting their Saturday. He broke the silence. So, what now? I looked at him. You tell me. Jamie rubbed his jaw, like he was trying to work through the thought before speaking. I don't want to keep this hidden. Whatever this is. I don't want to pretend we're just roommates when we're not. I blinked. You sure? He nodded. No, but I want to be. That made me laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh, just a real one. Something about the honesty of it hit me hard. I'm scared too, I admitted. Not of you, just of what comes next. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze softer now. You helped me come out to myself. I don't think I could have said that a month ago. Hell, I didn't even know I needed to. I swallowed. My throat was tight. And now? I asked. Now I want to figure out who I am, with you. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just let that sit between us, warming the space like sunlight through the kitchen window. Then I reached for his hand. I'd like that, I said. That weekend, we didn't go anywhere. We stayed in. Ordered pizza. Rewatched dumb movies we used to quote in high school. He kissed me again. Slow, unhurried. Like we had all the time in the world. And for once, we did. The following week, I came out to Maya. We were grabbing drinks, and I told her everything. She didn't even blink. Just said, I knew it, and then hugged me so hard I nearly spilled my beer. And Jamie? She asked. I nodded. Her eyes widened. Wait, Jamie? Jamie? Like high school, captain of everything Jamie? I laughed. Yeah, that Jamie. She stared at me for a second, then said, well, damn, you always did go for the slow burns. I told my parents 2 weeks later. It wasn't a big coming out speech, just a conversation. I told them about Jamie, about how long I'd waited, how long I'd been afraid. They weren't perfect. There were pauses, some quiet processing. But there was no yelling, no rejection, just a few tears from my mom, and a shaky, we love you no matter what, from my dad. It was enough. Jamie told his brother, then his mom. Then slowly he started telling friends, one by one. At his own pace, he didn't label it. He still doesn't. Sometimes he says he's not straight. Sometimes he just says he's with Nate. That's enough for me. Months passed. We figured it out as we went. Some nights were easier than others. Some conversations got heavy. But we always found our way back to each other. We still laugh, still argue over what to watch. He still steals all the covers. And I still fake complain about his alarm going off too early. But now, when we walk down the street, he holds my hand. When we go to parties, he introduces me as his boyfriend, softly, like he's still trying on the word. And when I catch him looking at me across the room, that look, the one that started all of this, is still there. The first time he kissed me, I wasn't ready. The second time, I was scared. But the third time, on a random Tuesday night, standing in our shared kitchen while he was wearing socks with holes and holding a fork full of leftover pad thai, he kissed me and whispered, I love you. I didn't hesitate. I love you too. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And finally, that was enough.